Hi there, I'm Phil and I'm here to share with you my experience of living with end-stage renal failure. This is the fourth in a series of videos about doing hemodialysis at home. This is the last one in the series. Today we get to the very best part of dialysis and the most frustrating. It's the best part because I'm finishing the session. The session is over. It's frustrating. Well, you can watch the video to find out why it's frustrating. I do just need to let you know that today, again, there are some parts of this video that involve needles and a bit of blood. If you're uncomfortable with that, there will be a warning on the screen like this, which will tell you how far ahead to jump to miss those things. As I said last week, totally understand if you need to skip those things. That's no problem. But if you want to see what is involved with doing hemodialysis, can I suggest that if you can bring yourself to watch the video the whole way through, that would be fantastic. All right, let's get on with it.
So I tend to get cold sitting still and the blood not getting down on my hand too much, so I wear fingerless gloves during the session, but obviously they're not the most hygienic thing to have on you when you're handling your blood lines. So a few minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes before the end of the session, I'll just get rid of them and wash my hands, and I grab the chart. What I try and do is fill out the chart as much as possible before actually getting off, because when I get off, I want to be off and just forget it. So I'm just working out what time I'm going to finish, how long the session's been, which is usually 4.5 hours. I can record all that stuff a few minutes ahead of time, because if anything goes wrong, I'm only going to lose a minute or two off the session. And generally it doesn't go wrong in those last few minutes. Okay, now I saved all those bits from when I was priming the machine. You see how I'm going to use them, but they've come off the machine and the lines during priming and getting on. Just getting the lines ready so I can reach them. Alright, so the session's ended and I'm going to do what's called rinse back now. And rinse back is where, instead of taking blood from my arm, so we've closed the clamp there with blood coming from my arm, open the clamp to the saline bag, the bag we left on top. The saline's now going to push the blood back into my body. Okay, so that's all done. We've got as much of my blood back into my body as possible. You can see the tubes are running a bit clearer now. We finished the rinse back and we're just going to close everything, tell it we're disconnected. I do it that way because if I don't, if the alarm goes off, you can see me disconnecting a couple of the lines from the sensors up there on the machine as well. That's to stop the alarms, but this is actually getting completely physically disconnected from the machine. It doesn't take too long. You remember I said I'm going to save that little bit when I was getting on? Well, that's so that I can reconnect the lines, get them in a loop again when I disconnect from my body. I'm not so concerned about the hygiene of the loop on the machine at this point, but I'm still being pretty careful about when I can undo it, being pretty careful about the hygiene of the lines that go into my body. Hence we put the cap on them before we worry about dealing with the lines on the machine. Once they're on the machine, the last thing that's going to happen with them is I'm going to take them off and then we'll clean the machine, so they're no longer really a priority in that regard. Okay, we are now completely disconnected from the machine. We've still got a wee way to go though. The next thing I have to do is take my blood pressure. So this is the last blood pressure of the 5. This is the blood pressure at the end. So once that blood pressure is taken, just better make sure I get it right, of course. But once that blood pressure is taken, I'll rearrange myself and get my feet down so that things are more accessible for me. I can stand up a bit and reach the trolley, pull it over. the clipboard, I just use it as a table to lay things out on. So now, you may remember right at the beginning when I laid out the on-pack, on the right-hand side I put spool strips. This is me using them now. The first one there that I'm folding up is the one I will use as a dressing on my arm, and this one here is to staunch the flow of blood once I take the needle out. Now, I did actually forget something at this point. I think I was concentrating on the recording too much, but I forgot to get the tape, the hypoallergenic tape. By the way, blood and needles coming up. Normally I'd have sorted out that tape and put it in the tray as well on my lap, but I didn't. So shortly my wonderful wife will come and give me a hand with that. Right, so we've removed the two top pieces of tape from the top needle. Now, when I remove the bottom one, the needle can wiggle around on my arm quite a bit, and that can be painful, and it can cause damage, which means additional bleeding. So I try and hold it as steady as possible. Just loosen it up a bit in case it's caught on anything in my arm, and then pull it out. Now, this is the most boring part of the whole thing. I have to keep pressure on my arm for a minimum 5 minutes. As you can see by my twitching, I get pretty bored and frustrated. I can't do anything. I have to sit around, and I'm really keen to get off the machine as well, because I'm just about there. So hopefully after 5 minutes, the wound will have stopped bleeding, and sometimes that works. Unfortunately, there are times, and especially the further up the arm I go, the longer it takes for the blood to stop, or the blood to clot. And in the case of this one, you can see I'm just going to take it off now. I had a look, and the blood's still pouring out. So pressure back on, and because the blood was still coming out at quite a rate, it's another 5 minutes. So this can take quite a while. So even though I've been off the machine already for probably 10 minutes, or not quite, 7 or 8 minutes, I got to sit around waiting for this pressure to do its job. I will sometimes do a countdown. I watch the clock quite closely, which probably adds to my frustration. Certainly when I get within the last 10 or 20 seconds, I'm counting down usually. But I do play a few mind games with the clock too. So here we go. Take it off. Oh, look at that. Stop bleeding. That's great. Now, I mentioned when I get on, in the video about getting on, that I don't seem to be able to get the tape as well organised as the nurses in the hospital are able to. So sometimes I do need to take the top tape off the bottom one in order to get the dressing to fit on the top one. So I'm just moving the flap of that one. What's happened is moved my arm around like that, started the bleeding again. I don't have to do another 5 minutes, just one more. But if I don't, what I've found is I put the dressing on, and then the dressing is soaked with blood. I have to take it off and start all over again. So I choose to spend an extra minute or two putting the pressure on, rather than an extra 5 or 10 minutes later on. So there's the bit of tape that my wonderful wife gave me. We'll just put that in place before we move on to the second needle. Sometimes it's a bit tricky getting the pressure on the top one without interfering with the bottom one, but from memory I think that one went reasonably well. A bit of a tidy up. Now, you remember I said everything was blade on or in it goes in the yellow bag. Needles are the exception. The reason we put things in the yellow bag is so people don't get infected with anything from my blood. But it's far worse for them to be stabbed with a needle with my blood in it than to touch a piece of gauze or something. So the needles go in the sharps despite the fact that they are fairly well full with my blood. Right, we'll just get everything ready for the second. Taking the second needle out. Again, I learned this trick from one of the guys who was in training with me, to have everything set up and ready to go for when you take the pressure off, rather than be messing around trying to get it sorted. So we'll just get that last one folded. And here we go again. So remembering we've already taken the top bit of tape off this one. Just only a couple to go. There's a bit of a knack to that, pulling that bottom one off without wiggling the needle around in your arm, but you do get the hang of it fairly quickly. All right, here we go. So 5 minutes on this one. Now, it looks like I'm about halfway up the fistula on this session. Normally when I get to the top of the fistula is when things bleed for longer. But it can happen for any reason. It could be that I've nicked something when I put the needle in, I pulled it out, or I moved my arm around, or it could be that the pressure just happens to be higher that day, or it could be something I have absolutely no idea about. You just have to take it as it comes. And sometimes I'll get away with the 5 minutes, as I say, and sometimes one takes a bit longer. Sometimes, as happened on this occasion, both take a bit longer. You may have seen a look of frustration on my face there. To have to do 10 minutes on both is fairly unusual, and I got to admit, fairly frustrating. I just want to get off the machine by this stage. I've been connected for probably almost 5 hours in total with these needles in my arm, and I'm just over it by now. However, I can't walk around with blood pouring out because I'll just bleed out. So here we go. We'll count down the last minute. And we find that it's clotted. So that's good news. Now, I'm not going to be moving my arm around with any of the other tapes, but I did look at it and noticed that there was a little bubble of blood still coming through. As I say, I may have been fine just dressing that, but I'd rather take the extra minute to make sure it's completely stopped than have to come back and do the whole thing again. Right, just get that sorted. I actually remembered to do the tape this time, so just chuck that on. These wounds, depending on how well I've done with putting the needle in, can hurt for a wee while afterwards, or they can just be, a little discomfort from the tape. It depends on the day, and it's totally down to how good a job I've done, pretty much. So we'll just get rid of our rubbish. You see, I'm checking again to make sure the blood hasn't come through. I get a bit nervous about that at the end of the session, that I haven't held the pressure down long enough, but looks like I've done it okay this time. I mean, it was 11 minutes on both, so that's a reasonable amount of time. Okay, so we're all done. So this thing to do is just tidy up. Oops. Chuck the rubbish. You can feel the blood when it comes out, by the way, in that arm, but like I say, I get a bit nervous. Okay, finally, I'm off to take my weight in that background, and I'm filling it in. And the goal is to reach my target weight, and I've just signed off the documentation for the session as well. Last thing to do is clean up the machine, and I've sped this up considerably because all it is strip the lines and everything from the machine, wipe it down, and then turn on the disinfection, which is part of the programming, and then I'm out of here. So you don't need to see this in great detail. There you go. got rid of all the bits and pieces. Saline's still up the top, so we'll get rid of that in a minute. That bucket I talked about when I was setting up, that's where the saline bag goes, and we use that as a weed killer on the garden, rather than pouring it down the drains where it can cause some damage. Right, we're away, so we're now just telling it to drain the bicarb off on the left. If you remember, that was full of water, so it's draining that out. We're going to give it a bit of a wipe down. I try and be as thorough as possible because, again, hygiene's key to staying healthy. So just give that a quick rub down. We even do the cuff and the tube, the blood pressure. We used to have trouble with this attachment between the cuff and the tube snapping all the time, so I've changed how I hang it up, hopefully putting a little less pressure. Alright, the bicarb's done. A little bit more of a wipe down, and now we're going to program it to disinfect, and it's done.
Thanks for watching this series about doing hemodialysis at home. I'd just like to remind you that this is my experience of hemodialysis. There are some people who have absolutely no problem putting needles in their arm, and you know, more power to you. There are other people who, for any of a variety of reasons, have to travel to a dialysis clinic every time they do a dialysis session. And again, everybody's situation is different. But the actual process of doing hemodialysis is at least similar, if not fairly much the same for most of us. So if you were just interested in knowing you know, what's involved with doing hemodialysis, thanks for watching. If you're doing dialysis of any sort, I just want to say kia kaha. It takes a certain type of person to keep going, and most importantly, you're not on your own. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed it or found it interesting, I'd appreciate it if you could hit like. If you want to know more about what it's like living with end-stage renal failure, then go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.